G'day, my name's Steve Weyland and welcome to Two Blokes and a Motorbike. This show's about two mates restoring classic motorcycles from the 70s, the 80s, right up to the late 90s. One bike at a time, because quite frankly, we're easily confused. We've got a lot of experience to draw on, so hopefully you'll come along for the ride and we'll keep it entertaining.
Two Blokes and a Motorbike is brought to you by bikereview.com.au.
This show, the carbies are mounted on the bike, as is the exhaust. Foot pegs and levers are fitted, and the airbox. A piece of steel goes on, along with a piece of alloy. And even pieces of plastic go in place. But first, let's start with what we didn't finish. Time to prepare the bike for the carby installation.
So we've got these intake manifold rubbers, and there's right hand ones and left hand ones, and they're stamped on the top here. Now there's a little mark there on the intake manifold rubbers, and that lines up with the casting line there on the head. Now the reason they have those marks there is so these intake manifolds, when they're on the bike, are at the exact right angle for the carburetors. Otherwise the carburetors can be too high, too low. They'll leak fuel into the engine when you don't want them to. So if you don't get that right, getting the carbies on can be really awkward.
Awkward? Let me tell you, even when the inlet manifolds are on correctly, fitting the carbies is still a pig of a job.
So like that, lines up with that, and do it with the screw.
After we've temporarily fitted the front airbox to the frame, we place the clamps on the airbox to carby rubbers.
They chose not to tell.
This wire is temporary, but all you need to do is make sure the airbox is held back out of the way. So we take the assembled carbies and feed them carefully between all the rubber ducts. The aim is to push all four into the inlet manifolds on the motor. Fucking go today. To make it easier, we swap sides. I'm trying to stop these from coming out. We swap again. We sacrifice a goat. We resort to using the wrong tools. We even light incense and pray to s1ep5, the ancient Egyptian god of carburation. I cannot tell you how much effort we put in, but finally, the bastard carbies have gone into place. Oh, and if you're ridiculously squeamish, turn away now.
We've closed the gap, folks. It took a little bit of blood, sweat and tears, but we've got the carbies onto the inlet rubbers now. Because these are so hard, as they're so old, it makes the job 10 times more difficult than if you had brand new rubbers, but unfortunately you cannot buy these anymore. So you've got to work with what you've got in some cases, and that was a hell of an effort for Mikey and I to pull those carbies on, but we got them on. Perseverance pays off, kids. Remember that. Or something like that. Sometimes it doesn't, but anyway.
As you can see, drinking red wine while working on your bike is a stupid idea. A responsible person always sticks to beer. Now, after we successfully fit the throttle cable that we should have fitted before installing the carbies, let's just call that a lesson learned, we move on to the choke cable, which Mike apparently chose to narrate through a steel funnel.
Okay, we're going to fit the choke cable now, so if Steve can just push over the choke rail. So there's the bit for the cable to hook onto, so that goes in like that. Then the top bit hooks onto the little bracket there. There's a stopper to stop it from going down too low. Tighten up that screw, and there. Okay, you can let go of that, Steve. And now we have a operating choke.
Well, s1ep5 be praised. We finally finished the carbies, and for the next job we'll move to the front of the motor and fit the exhausts. Now, while we were back in the old shed, we took the time to dummy fit a new exhaust system to another Katana we had on hand. Not that I doubt him, folks, but I think he's wrong. He's going to try and turn the header pipe, so we've got a problem with the headers. One of them is actually touching the bottom of the motor, the sump. This number 1 pipe over here, so we're going to loosen it and try and tweak it a little bit, just to see if we can get a little bit. A few mil clearance is all you need. We just don't want it vibrating against the engine, because that'd be bloody annoying. Anyway, once we were happy everything was where it should be, we sent it off to a local exhaust bloke so he could make a muffler to suit. See? You're not home yet. Now that we've got this muffler back, we can refit the whole system to the project bike, and hopefully everything lines up like it should. Pipes around. Will they come back? After fitting new exhaust gaskets and with some final adjustment, we bolt the headers in place. The company that make the header pipes also have a matching muffler, but we felt its shape didn't suit the era of the bike. So we asked our muffler guy to go for the good old hot dog style, and had it chromed, which sits well with the stainless pipes. Now you only get one crack at fitting new engine badges because they stick like mud to a monkey. They do have a little notch in the bottom so you can get them straight, so look for that first. Okay, no, we didn't get that, so take it off and do it again. That will last longer than a block of hand soap in a truck stop toilet. And now for yet another brand new part.
Today we're fitting the front sprocket cover here. It's a brand new cover, as you can see. It's quite clean on the inside. They never looked like that twice. So this cover fits over the front sprocket and chain. It covers the starter motor wiring and the neutral light switch. Slides over the gear selector shaft. Tidies up this whole area really well. Much nicer looking bike once this is on. Okay, we'll line up the hole in the cover there with the gear selector shaft. And get him on there. Oh, that went on easy. That's better. So, get this short one at the top.
As Mike puts the bolts in, you might be wondering why the yellow foam was on the inside of the cover. Suzuki put it there to keep down chain noise, but quite frankly, it hardly made a difference.
None of these bolts are the same size or the same length. So, when you do go to put these covers on, always make sure you've got the right hole for the right bolt, otherwise they just bottom out or they just don't reach. We're using Allen head bolts on this engine. They come with bolt head as a 7mm bolts normally, but the Allen keys give it a nicer look. Right, one cover on.
If you're looking to buy an 80s bike for restoration purposes, you will find some models are more plentiful than others. That's because they obviously sold in larger numbers, which makes parts availability better and the parts are cheaper than the more obscure, less popular bikes. If it's rare, it's usually because nobody bought them. And if no one liked them then, no one likes them now. Rarity does not necessarily mean it's valuable. Now, I speak from some experience when I say that some models landed on the market like a cowpat in a paddock. Models like Suzuki's GR650, Honda's FT500, Yamaha's XS400, or the Kawasaki LTD440. They all made one, and riding any one of these buckets of blandness was enough to induce a coma. Now, I know some owners swore by them, the rest of us swore at them. A lot of them were nothing more than experiments on the buying public. We could do a whole series on bikes to avoid. Some bikes, however, set new standards in design and performance and went on to legendary status, setting up a whole model lineup. Bikes like the GPZs, the CBRs, GSXRs, YZFs, all fantastic bikes. Then they also made things like the shaft-driven clunkers of the 80s as well. But you'll find most of them these days have been fitted with a chain. An anchor chain leading up to a boat. Do your research, folks, and good luck. Next job after lubing the shaft, on goes the gear selector.
Right, now we're going to put on the gear selector linkage. We've got two linkages on the Katana because they've got rear set type foot pegs. So this one goes onto the output, the gear selector shaft. The bolt in. Then we've got the gear selector lever, and these have a reverse thread this end. So you can adjust the lever up and down. So we'll screw that on there. We'll put that on there, and with the circlip pliers go on there.
Of course, we did notice the siren in the background eventually.
Right, so I'll just tighten that up.
But we want the gritty, authentic feel of real life. Actually, we just couldn't be buggered filming it again.
So the gear lever's all set up, all nice, new rubber there, which you can still get from Suzuki. Just little things like that, just make it a whole lot more comfortable and just finish it off. The foot pegs can go on now. These aren't new, these were cleaned up. The foot pegs were pretty filthy, so I sandblasted all those back and repainted them, cleaned up the rubbers. We had these powder coated after they were cleaned up, so they've come up really nice. And a slightly different silver than the frame, so they stand out just a little bit different. Same colour as the swing arm. So we'll get these on.
Mike gives the foot peg a test with the weight of his hand, and he's happy. Now let's deal with the pillion pegs.
So now we're going to fit the rear foot peg on the side here. So they're fairly low tech. They just have this part which stops the rubber from squishing too much. That slips on there. That there, part of the foot peg, just hits up against the frame to stop it swinging too far forwards when it comes down. So they're fairly low tech, but they do the job. So we need a pivot bolt here, and that just slides in. Bit of pressure on the rubber to line the hole up, and there. So that's how it works, pretty straightforward. Screw on the bottom, a nut on the bottom I mean. Done. Easy.
Now the rear indicators go on. They're held on with just one nut and the wiring goes up under the seat. Right, we're going to fit the steel chain guard to this bike now. We've had it nice painted up and presentable. There's nothing much plastic on this bike, everything's made of steel, which is probably why it weighs so much. And you know that when you're riding it. So we're going to try and locate there onto there and see how we go. Coming from the back, trying not to scratch anything as we go. So you can see the bolt holes lined up with there where the bolt goes on the outside, so we know we're around the mark. Bolts go in and all is secured. That's yet another kilo or so added to the bike, which is why chain guards, among other parts, are now made of plastic. For some reason in this segment, like the French revolutionaries, we thought that Mike would look much more attractive without his head. So we're fitting the air filter part of the airbox now. The air filter was inside
there, it's a clean new air filter, and right down the bottom here, that's where the air intake is to the airbox. So we'll see how we go. They're a little bit tricky to go in.
Mike swaps sides so he can get a better view. And with sheer brute force and ignorance, in she goes.
There we go. So once most of it's in, we'll line up the front in there to line up on the back of the airbox, on the front of the air filter part.
First we put in the 2 bolts at the back of the airbox, then we move on to the 2 hose clamps at the front of the airbox and make sure they're secure. Finally, the rear brake reservoir is reinstalled. Okay, let's get the clutch cable on the bike. First you connect the threaded piece to the top of the crankcase before adjusting anything else. Now the cable is fed up between the first and second carby on the left hand side, and with the aid of a wire bracket it's held in place. You have to be sure it has no sharp angles and doesn't get snagged when the tank goes on. We'll adjust it after we fit the clutch lever. It always pays to check the manual for the correct routing of cables. Now you may choose to say routing, but I prefer routing. Let me point out that an incorrectly routed cable is soon enough well and truly routed. Apart from the cables and hoses and coils, there's also things like the horn that we have to fit before the tank goes on. Now this horn isn't genuine, but it looks the same, sounds the same, and it'll do the job. Right, let's talk workshop equipment. Boring to look at compared to bikes, but essential if you're serious about restoring them. You might enjoy hiding in the shed and rubbing your bits with sandpaper, but a bead blaster can save you a whole lot of time. It's a quick and easy way to prepare parts for painting, and they're not overly expensive to buy. Of course, to run one you need an air compressor, but again, prices for these can be quite reasonable. And not only can you inflate your tyres with an air compressor, you can also use a paint spray gun or even a rattle gun with sockets, which can give you much more power when trying to loosen old axle nuts and sprocket nuts, etc. Looking at the two of us, you might think this is a donut fryer, but no, it's an ultrasonic parts cleaner, which was instrumental in helping clean up carby and brake internals. Another wise investment. A multimeter is handy, but obviously only to those who know how to use one. And a good torque wrench is invaluable if you want to build things right. Okay, let's get back to the bike and look at the switch blocks.
Okay, these switch blocks were pretty untidy when we got the bike and pretty dirty, so I've given them a bit of a clean up and a bit of paint. But you can't buy these stickers separately from Suzuki, but there's a mob in England that I got this from, and these are fairly unique to the Katana, so you kind of need it on there. Now once this goes on, it goes on. There's no second tries, so let's see how we go.
This job is easy if you've got the steady hands of a surgeon, but if you're as jittery as a ferret on speed, you might want to leave this job to someone else. Or if, like Mike, you've got hands like 4 kilos of pork sausages, you may need to use your eyebrow tweezers to get the stickers perfectly straight. But seriously, take your time with this stuff, it's definitely worthwhile. It's small details like these that give a bike a much more appealing finish. So no prizes for guessing which part goes on the bike next.
So we've got your obviously left and right hand switch blocks, so we'll just slide the wiring through and plug that up later. Fit that there, and that one goes there, and a couple of screws. As a general rule, I always tighten up the top screw first on switch blocks, just in case they don't quite seal up nice. If you get the top one done first, there's less chance of water getting into them. I mean, they're supposed to seal completely, but you never know. So there's the left-hand one done. So we'll plug the wiring in later. Now the right-hand one. So yeah, we're going to fit the throttle cable to the underside of the switch block into there. So throttle cable can go into there, like so. So that comes through to the inside. Now the throttle slides onto the handlebar. Okay, so we'll locate the cable into the throttle tube there, like so. And now the front part of the switch block can go on straight onto the cable. There we go. Now a couple of screws. Alright, so I'm not too fussed about where the switch blocks are sitting on the handlebars at the moment. We still have to put on the handlebar weights and the grip here, so everything will get sorted out. The master cylinder still has to move, so there's gaps there, but they're on there, that's the main thing, and they're looking pretty good, so pretty happy with how that turned out.
The good news is we could still buy the genuine handlebar grips from Suzuki. The right-hand one will only come with the throttle tube attached. The left-hand one, of course, we had to fit ourselves.
Okay, now we're going to fit the grip onto the handlebar now that these switch blocks and levers are all in the right place. The best way to do it, we found, is just to use compressed air. It makes the difficult job a lot easier. You used to maybe put some soapy water down there and help slide it on, but compressed air is just much easier. So we'll just start it, and there we go, and just finish it off here. Much easier.
I, for one, struggled for years coming to grips with fitting grips. But 40 years ago, I didn't have access to an air compressor either. This is yet another example of how having the right workshop equipment makes life a whole lot easier.
Now that the grip's on, we'll fit the handlebar balancer. These are full of lead. They're solid, quite heavy, onto the end of the handlebar to take a lot of the buzzing out of these bars, because they bolt straight to the fork leg. There's no rubber mounts on these bikes, so you need these, otherwise your hands will go to sleep when you're riding.
Most large capacity inline 4-cylinder bikes from the 80s, including Suzuki's own GSX-1150 models for example, had up to half a kilo of lead hanging off each handlebar and under each foot peg to counter engine vibrations, which again made big heavy bikes even heavier. And just like the foot pegs, Mike pats the handlebar with his hand to test it's bolted on properly. What does he care? I'll be the one taking the maiden voyage. I'm just kicking back in the study, doing a bit of homework, with a frothy of course. Time to read another letter from a viewer. I've inherited an old VF750F Honda from my uncle's estate, and I'm considering turning it into a cut-down cafe racer. Do you have any sage advice, Annie? Well, Annie, I couldn't think of a better bike to cut in half. But you're probably getting rid of the best bits. You see, they used to say the pin fell out of these time bombs when they left the showroom floor. I remember their cams were so called because they were made from camembert. But let's leave the motor to one side. As far as frames go, unless your surname's Rickman or McIntosh, I'd leave the gas axe under the bench. You got to remember, manufacturers spent millions of dollars on R&D to get a bike to handle right, with the right ground clearance, weight distribution, etc. But if you think you're going to improve it with the help of a bloke next door who's handy with a rivet gun and a grinder, you go right ahead. Just don't be surprised when nobody wants to buy it from you down the track. Thanks for your letter, Annie. Don't miss our next and final episode, and we'll discover if the bodywork actually fits, and hopefully we'll reveal the look of the complete bike. Does it actually run? Do I get to ride it? Or am I on a horse? Tune in next time, you won't be disappointed.
Two Blokes and a Motorbike is brought to you by bikereview.com.au.
Right, so today we're going to fit the front sprocket cover here. Brand new part.
My ears are bleeding.
Brand new unscratched
The
part.
headphones again.
Look, the brake master.
What was that?
I don't know.
What the fuck was that?
And to this very day, we have no idea what made that sound.